Welcome to CP Newsroom. I'm Nicola Menzi. Joining us today is Rich Wilkerson Jr., Associate Pastor at Trinity Church in Miami, who leads, along with his wife, the church's young adult ministry, the Rendezvous, or the Vous. The Vous serves about 1,000 young people, placing Pastor Rich among a list of young leaders who have the opportunity and the privilege to speak into the lives of today's generation. Welcome, Pastor Rich.
Hey, Nicola, thanks for having me today.
Thanks for joining us.
This is so cool being here.
All right, so I guess to get right into it, what are some of the challenges you face as a young Christian leader, maybe within the church and just, outside of the church?
Yeah, well, challenges, I think, always in leadership you're going to always have challenges. Number one, you're dealing with people, and people present problems.
Mm-hmm.
The other day I was talking to someone and they said, man, I like this church, but I got to leave. There's too many problems here. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, I don't know, I just keep running into problems. I go, well, it probably means because you keep running into people. Right. And a church without problems means it's a church without people, and a church without people isn't really a church. Mm-hmm. But I think in general you're going to always have different types of challenges. I think right now with this generation, it's always trying to, in my opinion, kind of present Jesus, the gospel, but then also wanting to see people walk out commitment and discipline. I think a lot of the different facts and statistics that are surrounding us, especially right home in Miami where I'm at, in our immediate neighborhood, it's about 70% of the kids growing up in a single parent home. Right where we're living at, there's about 50% who don't graduate from high school. Right. I think a lot of these challenges end up kind of creating really a lack of commitment, a lack of discipline sometimes. And so I think just the consistency that you're trying to see happen, maybe in the years past was always there, seems sometimes to be missing with this generation. However, I do think that the gospel and its relevancy is not just a behavior modification message, but rather it's a heart transformation message. Right. And when the heart gets changed from the inside out, I think you see all sorts of fruit in people's lives.
Okay, all right. So that sounds nice on one hand.
Sure.
But we're dealing with a culture and generation where, and for good cause, some would say, a lot of people are suspicious of the church. Of Christianity, have certain preconceived ideas about Jesus. So maybe, when you travel and you talk to people, what are some of the misconceptions that you're hearing or the questions they have?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. Right off the bat, I think that most people, what I've learned about people is that whether or not people have a relationship with Jesus, they still have a perception about Jesus.
Right.
And the perception that I encounter the most is that he's weak, irrelevant, and weird. And the reason why is because they've met weak, irrelevant, and weird Christians.
Makes sense.
And so I feel like there's a group of guys that are good friends of mine, but I think I see it everywhere that I go that are trying to fight back on that paradigm of thinking. And I think it starts with every individual believer, you know what I mean? That we understand what is the gospel. I think so often when I grew up, I think I knew the gospel message, but I'm not quite sure if I knew the heart of the gospel. I think I thought gospel was like morality or being good or, quit doing the bad stuff, get rid of the secular music, quit smoking, don't.
You're doing all of that?
Well, that's another story, Nicola. If we're going to go into that today, my goodness. But I'm just saying, whatever the list was of things, we kind of classify, that's what Jesus is against. Well, that's not really what Jesus' message ever really was. Jesus came for a deeper thing. He came to change us from the inside out. It's not a message of, really bad to good. It's a message of dead to life.
Right.
And so I think, what do I encounter? I think I encounter all of these types of preconceived ideas of what people think a Christian is. Most of the time what I think people think Christianity is a set of rules and is simply a set of behavior. And I definitely believe there's standards of how we should live as believers, but I think Jesus' first message was simply this: come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Okay. Meaning you don't come to Jesus after you get your life put together. You come to Jesus when your life is a wreck, and you allow Jesus to change you from the inside out. And the only way we begin to change these thought processes that are out there is when believers stand up and actually begin to preach the gospel and then actually do what Jesus did. And what we see Jesus do is we see Jesus going to the unlovable, the unreachable, those that society says, hey, are quote-unquote bad or evil. You see it all throughout the Gospels. Jesus hanging out with the tax collectors. Jesus hanging out with the prostitutes. He finds himself in dark areas, but I believe that he knew the truth that light is actually the only thing that's going to overcome the darkness. And so what I believe that we're seeing right now is a real gospel resurgence, a real gospel awakening, and I really believe that we're seeing people step into the night with the light-giving message of Jesus.
Okay, and I wanted to touch on briefly, you're a young leader, you're 30-ish?
I'm 42, but you can't tell actually because of my skin. No, I just turned 30.
Okay, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so, you're in your...
I use a lot of creams,
You're in your 30s. Of course, your father.
30s. I hate when you say that. I hate it when you say it.
What should I say?
Well, I
just
miss
came out
my
of your
20s so much. Yeah, that's better.
Just came
so
out
you
of your
came out of your 20s. What are you seeing on the? Yeah.
No, but okay. So you
Well,
just
I'm
came
just,
out
Jesus started his ministry at 30.
Right.
By 33, he was dead. So it scares me a little bit. It scares me. He did resurrect, but I don't know if I have that exact same power. No, I'm kidding with you.
Yes, I get that, but okay. No, but to get to the question.
Sorry, apologize.
It's okay.
I deviate.
So you just came out of your 20s.
Yep, I love you. She's so nice.
And you know, when you look around, it seems to be the Christian leaders with maybe the most visible platforms.
Okay.
Or who get to speak the most are older folks.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, do you see anything in that scene of like the older, more seasoned leaders, things they may be neglecting? Because everything, I think, is or should be about the younger generation. They're going to sustain and fill the church and take the church forward. Are they neglecting that demographic in any way?
You know, not in my experience. You know, I think everyone kind of always makes decisions and makes comments based upon their experience. My experience is that I've got a father who's the greatest guy in the world. He's the best pastor. He's the best dad. He's 61 right now, and all he's ever done in my entire life is push me and release me, push me and release me. You know, I'm sure in certain circles, in certain places, there's some people that maybe are not doing that. But my experience has been that I've always stood on the shoulders of my dad.
Right.
I've always stood on the shoulders of different older leaders in my life, have pushed me and propelled me forward. And I really believe that this is, once again, a picture of what we see in God's Word. I mean, we know that God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's the God of generations.
Right, right.
And I always believe that God is doing something new on the earth. I think it's the same message, but I think the methods are constantly changing. And I think that if we don't release young leaders into their proper place, what happens sometimes is that I think we miss out on the new thing that God wants to do for that time period. I think there's a place for every generation. And I think the scarier thing is when my generation doesn't recognize or honor the ones that have gone before us.
Good point.
So I think I probably see a little bit more of that. I don't know if it's, I think there's a lot of young people that go, oh, like, and they don't realize that really, man, we're living out some of the prayers of the guys who went before us. We're actually reaping a harvest of seed we did not plant. It sounds like the Bible a little bit. But, and so I think we have to be careful with that, you know. That's probably the bigger challenge I think that's before us as a young generation that's seen some incredible things happen right now. In America, I'm speaking of primarily, but I see it around the world, that we would understand that so much of what's happening is really less about the leadership of the young guys today, and it's really more about the prayers and the seed that was sown by a generation before us. That we got to make sure that we honor both ways, you know.
Okay, great point, great point. And finally, so touching on that a bit, ever since, you know, the rise of the mega church, maybe, it's also led to the rise of the celebrity pastor. And so you have some Christians who are critical of that.
Sure.
And come on, everyone knows.
I've never been criticized before. I've never.
Exactly.
I don't know what you're talking about. But this is fun. Yeah.
Right. So suddenly, you know, the Kim Kardashian and Kanye West wedding, you're suddenly the hot pastor.
Really?
Yes.
Now these
you
your
didn't see the
words,
headlines? I'm
or,
sure. Okay, whatever. You saw the headlines. So suddenly, you know, you're this figure. So you have some Christians who are automatically suspicious. Oh, he's with a celebrity. Can't be good. But then you have people who are like, what's wrong with that?
Right.
You know, so how do you process that stuff when you're hearing these things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. Number one, hot pastor, I'll take that anytime. I just turned 30. My wife, I'm just, you know, I want to encourage her. But I think it's a really, really big question, and I think it really does need to be answered. You know, for me, how do I process that? I do believe, once again, as I look at the life of Jesus, that he always had criticism. Now, I'm not trying to have criticism or wanting criticism, but I think it's a little bit a part of anytime you step into preaching the gospel, operating from a paradigm of grace, that you're going to have people that riles up. Everywhere you look, Jesus was getting criticized. And who was he getting criticized from? It wasn't the world. It was inside the church a little bit. Now, it makes me sad that I don't know how we get so blinded in this. But I also think that sometimes people, even when they criticize, they actually really do mean good. I think sometimes people see something like that, whatever, me being with somebody or one of our friends being with somebody, and they get worried because they don't know what's happening, and so their knee-jerk reaction is, let me criticize it. For me, I want to try to live my life like Jesus lived his life. I'm really far from doing that. I'm so far from being like Jesus. But I think it's a process day in and day out. I'm not perfect, but I feel like I'm being perfected in him. And as I look at Jesus, I just see him in so many spaces, in so many places, with people that supposedly you're not supposed to be with.
Right.
And for me, I feel like I want to risk it all. I want to lay it all on the table for people. If it's in the name of celebrity, I think that's crazy. If it's in the name of being famous, this is silly. That's not what it's about. It's about reaching people.
Right.
And so often in 2014 in America, sometimes the most unreachable people are these people that have this pedestal or this platform of fame and celebrity.
Sure.
And if we're not willing to even go to them, who will go?
Right. And Jesus did say, go into all the world.
See,
He
now
didn't
you're
say,
preaching
go
on me.
to the dark places or the bright
I feel like
places
you
or
and
the
I,
comfortable places.
I think we should go into ministry together. I think we should take this thing to the ends of the earth, and let's do this.
All right. Well, thank you, Pastor Rich Wilkerson
Yeah.
Jr., for your insight and your passion.
I'm sorry, I get
you know,
excited. I know.
It's not a bad thing.
Well,
It's
it's
a good
3 a.m. right now. People don't know that. You and I just, we're hyped up on Red Bull.
Exactly.
No, it's morning time.
And coffee.
Yeah.
All right, so thanks again for
Thank
joining us.
you so much for having me. I appreciate you. This is an amazing thing what you guys are doing. We love the Christian Post, and we love all the ministry you guys are bringing to people. So thanks for including me today.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. And thank you for tuning in to CP Newsroom. Remember, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please write to us at cpnewsroom@christianpost.com. See you next time.